you tired of the subjectivity and inconsistency of video game reviews with number scores? Bumpkus Bites is the only solution. Here, we review video games with objective, food-based scores. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a mid-tier lasagna. Persona 5 is a classic Japanese breakfast. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War is Masaman curry. As you now clearly see the urgent need for my input specifically, let's get into another Bumpkus Bites food video game review. It's finally spooky season once again, and I personally find it really nice that we don't have to recite insidious incantations as part of occult rituals to sate the boundless hunger of the old ones anymore. We can just play horror video games. Castlevania is perhaps the OG Halloween game. Spooky castles, backtracking, and the recurring villain, Nosferatu. And it seems like a lot of people have sung the series' grim praises over the years, which is why I was disappointed when my first foray included crawling movement speed, slow animations, frustrating hitboxes, and chase sequences crippled by those aforementioned aspects. Recently, however, a friend of mine forced me to play Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. I was immediately hooked. This one has, okay, I won't get ahead of myself, but I'll just say there was grinding. That's right, my fellow Homo erectus evolutionary stragglers out there. It's time for another lizard brain game. We'll start off with story. Mild spoilers here. Skip to the next section if you want to go in blind. Honestly, I was prepared to be underwhelmed by Aria of Sorrow's story. This is my first real experience with a Castlevania game, and it's not one I'd heard much about. The central conceit is that you, Soma Cruz, and your childhood friend, Mina Hakuba, get whisked away to Nosferatu's castle on your way to a nearby shrine to beat the eclipse. The castle is inside the eclipse. Oh, and it's 2035. I assume that has some significance for the Castlevania timeline, because otherwise it doesn't matter. Agents of the Catholic Church who happen to also be in the castle enlist your help in finding whoever the castle has pulled in to take Dracula's place, promising you'll need to do so in order to get back to Japan again. So you wander through the castle, absorb monster souls through that sweet grinding... more on that later. You meet a few different characters with varying degrees of shadiness throughout the castle, and the narrative unfolds at a satisfyingly gradual pace. You eventually perhaps face off against Nosferatu, but there are some wrinkles here and there that add some layers to that encounter. I won't spoil anything, but there are multiple endings. The true one requires a specific set of items you'll need to search the castle for. I don't think VatiVidya is going to be making any videos on the lore here, but it's just intriguing enough to keep you mildly curious and to pay attention to the environmental storytelling throughout. The castle seems to change as you hit certain story milestones. It has legitimately spooky moments, with rain hammering against the castle walls and thunder crashing in the distance while horrifying creatures bear down on you. While Aria of Sorrow's story isn't a substantial narrative experience, it's near perfect for the game it's a part of. I rate story the layer of milk foam on a warm, cozy latte. Next is setting. As I've talked a bit about environmental storytelling already, I'll keep this brief. Dracula's castle is huge, and the environments within are surprisingly varied, though not jarringly so. You'll visit the gardens, the parapets, decadent inner chambers, and flooded dungeons. Each of these has their own unique atmosphere reinforced by the enemies who fill it. For example, the floating ghost dancers in the ballroom, who float back and forth through the air, heedless of their present time. Skeleton butlers show up to chuck plates of food at you. Reanimated fish skulls come alive in some of the underwater segments, according to the in-game encyclopedia, to protect their home waters. These enemies have flavors and personalities that add context to and belong in the world they occupy. It's really neat to see this executed so well, especially when the enemy variety here is so good. Oh, and I have to call out the Kioma demons, the enemies who reside in just a few of the mirrors in the game. I immediately got chills when I caught a glimpse of my first one. When they came out of the mirror to try to drag me to my death, give me more murderous mirror enemies in games. It's been a while since I've played a game with as strong a setting as Nosferatu's castle in Aria of Sorrow. It's really a character of its own, one that shows you many facets of themselves over the game's playtime. I rate setting a pile of shredded, sharp cheddar. Now for audio. I have to start with the sound design. I'm convinced the sound hits make when they connect is what so quickly engrossed me. You do it once and you just want to do it again and again. Weapons sound different from one another. And each one of them is satisfying to use in that respect. The enemy sound effects are great too, whether it's one of the giant lumbering armored warriors, the Valkyries shouting a war cry as they dive toward you, or one of the dreaded succubi trying to grab you to deal a ton of damage. The voice acting is minimal and compressed in GBA fashion, but as mentioned with enemy sound design, what's here adds to the game's atmosphere, no complaints. Music is very good, but could maybe just use a few more tracks. Some of what's here is truly great, but most fall into the category of good but simple so as to accommodate shorter loops. On the bright side though, the great tracks are all used to add to key moments in the story or in exploration. Audio overall is fantastic, and so I rate it a piece of crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside, garlic toast. Visual design and user interface. Okay, the menuing in Aria of Sorrow did get a little annoying. After you get the water-related powers tied to souls especially, be prepared to go into the menus and swap souls around every time you see water. You also have to do this with offensive soul powers and weapons to fight certain enemies. Admittedly, this has a positive flip side, but I'll get into that more with gameplay. In a game where it's so fun to move around and fight and grunt gameplay, right? In a game that's so much fun to play moment to moment, every second you spend having to go into the menus to swap stuff around, even if it's just for a moment, does hurt momentum. I understand this is a GBA game that was already utilizing every button the GBA had, but it would be nice if they had at least implemented a favorites feature or something in the recently released Advance Collection. Maybe you could tie certain souls and weapons to a combo of button presses and then quick swap on the fly without having to bring up the pause menu. It could be telling that I have complaints about the menu taking me out of the game. Didn't have the problem with Diablo, and that game is practically half menus. The menus themselves are great at least. The most important thing, soul swapping, is at the top, and equip is next in line, and the process of swapping out souls and equipment is quick and easy. The visual design of Aria of Sorrow is great. It seems a little weird to group this with UI in a review where the graphics serve a more significant purpose in the game's presentation, but here we are. I think what I've said previously about enemy and environment design covers it, but I'll reiterate one last time that this is a world that feels good to be in. It's not oppressive, but it's foreboding. Every corner of Nosferatu's castle oozes a level of spookiness that makes me want to start the game again right now as I'm talking about it. I rate Aria of Sorrow's visual design and user interface a crunchy, sweet and salty crab rangoon, where some of the filling falls out on the first bite. Alright, gameplay. We made it. Turn the volume down on your Diablo 4 dopamine IV drip if you haven't already muted it entirely, so you can watch The Office for the 46th time in the background and get ready to be sucked in by a different form of lizard brain gratification. After the slow pace of the previous Castlevania games I'd tried, I was really afraid of meeting with something similar here. Not so at all. The running speed feels just right, movement in general feels great, and your attacks feel weighty without excessive sluggishness. Not only that, I can say it now. There's grinding, y'all. That's right, you can get your fix here too. Watch this. Yeah, you just run in, hit the thing, kill it, run out, and then run in again. Repeat until you get enough of that sweet XP to level up, or until you get the enemy's soul, which has a percentage chance of dropping each time you kill it. See, each soul gives you a unique power. It could be passive, active, or something sort of in between, and each takes up one of 3 slots. I've played some games with a system kind of like this, where I found one power and stuck with it for the entire game. Not so here. For one, different powers have different damage types, and enemies have specific weaknesses and resistances. For another, some of these are genuinely busted in certain situations, like being able to kill one of the game's first bosses by just chucking grenades at it from an upper platform. So those are active skills. The hybrid skills, they take effect for as long as you hold the button. Okay, yeah, I get that's basically just an active skill that you channel, but I prefer to think of them as hybrid, active, passive skills. While a lot of these looked really fun to use, the frequency of the need to use the traversal hybrid skills and the significant mana drain associated with all of the others discouraged me from experimenting too much. The passive skills start off as stat boosts, so of course I picked the strength ones every time until I got to water traversal skills. These are a necessity velocity for certain parts of the map. They're fun to use, it's just tedious swapping them out with my strength plus 16 skill repeatedly. But then you get the Succubus Soul, which restores your health by 5 for each hit that connects. I equipped this one as soon as I picked it up, and it resulted in a huge change to how I played the game. Whereas before I was always eyeing the map to see how close I was to the nearest save point, those restore your health and mana completely. Now I could just run to this guy and get like 100 HP back. To me, late game powers like this are consistent with a good game's method of power scaling. The player should feel more powerful when they end than when they started, but they should also still feel challenged. It's a balance that I think a lot of games struggle with, that Aria of Sorrow gets just right. Okay, I need to wrap this up. If you're not a person who likes figuring out the Metroidvania puzzle of where you're supposed to go next, maybe play with a guide or something? I don't know, I'm not the boss of you. I enjoyed that aspect of Aria of Sorrow, and really only ran into trouble when I didn't realize I had to press down to make an elevator go down. The exploration is also vital in uncovering some items, powerful weapons, money, which I don't have time for this. The economy is decent, I'll leave it at that. Oh, XP gets you levels and increased stats, which makes you feel more powerful. Grinding is so rewarding! I rate Aria of Sorrow's gameplay. Some bomb spinach and artichoke dip. Like when you kind of just want to eat it by yourself. And you don't want to share with anyone else. I mean, that's your dip. Just eat it. Don't let them take it from you. Final score. All right, here we go. Let's see. The latte foam, the cheddar cheese, garlic toast, crab rangoon, and the unshareable bomb dip. These different elements combine to form. I've got it. The fattest, most satisfying burrito you've ever had. No lettuce and just the right proportions of beans, meat, rice, whatever else you want to put in there. I don't know, salsa. It's got salsa. And then you take it and you just put it in some of that dip and you just take a big old bite. And this has been a Bumpkus Bites review, the only objective reviews on the internet and your source of absolutely true opinions. Please join me next time for my review of the Silent Hill 2 remake. I've heard that game goes to some spooky places. My planned video schedule right now is once every 3 weeks, so that should be out on Halloween for most people. Thanks for watching. Please validate my opinions in the comments below, and see you next time.